What happens when Hollywood royalty meets actual royalty on daytime television and the cameras capture every brutal second of a meltdown that nobody saw coming? In just 37 seconds, one comment would expose the true character behind the carefully crafted public image and turn a simple interview into television history. Jennifer Hudson sat across from her guest in the warmly lit studio, her genuine smile radiating the same warmth that had made her show a safe haven for celebrities wanting real conversations. The audience buzzed with excitement. This was supposed to be a friendly chat, the kind Jennifer was famous for. Light, uplifting, inspiring. "I'm so excited to have you here today," Jennifer began, her voice carrying that signature blend of Mississippi sweetness and hard-earned wisdom. "Your journey has been incredible to watch, and I know our audience is dying to hear about your new projects." The response came with a practiced smile, but something cold flickered behind it. "Well, Jennifer, I appreciate you having me. Though, I have to say, your team's preparation could use some work. The green room coffee was barely drinkable, and honestly, I expected better." Jennifer's eyebrows raised slightly, but her professional composure never wavered. She had dealt with difficult guests before. 20 years in entertainment had taught her patience. "Oh, I'm sorry about that. We'll definitely make note of that for next time. But let's talk about what really matters. Your advocacy work has touched so many lives." "Has it, though?" The words came out sharp, almost dismissive. "I mean, let's be honest here, Jennifer. Your show, these daytime programs, they're all the same. Softball questions, fake enthusiasm. When was the last time you asked someone something that actually mattered?" The studio audience shifted uncomfortably. This wasn't the tone they expected. Jennifer, however, remained calm, her hands folded gracefully in her lap. "I think our viewers would disagree. We try to create a space where people can share their authentic selves." "Speaking of authenticity, I'd love to hear about how you balance your public responsibilities with being true to yourself." A laugh, cold and calculated, filled the space between them. "Balance? Jennifer, sweetie, you wouldn't understand balance if it hit you in the face. You've had everything handed to you. American Idol, Oscar, talk show. Some of us actually had to fight for respect." The audience gasped audibly. Jennifer's smile tightened, but she pressed forward with grace. "I think many people would say we've both had to overcome challenges. That's actually something I admire about your story." "My story?" The response came faster now, more aggressive. "Let me tell you about stories, Jennifer. Real stories aren't about singing your way to fame or getting handed opportunities because you fit some narrative. Real stories are about changing systems, breaking down barriers that people like you never even knew existed." Jennifer leaned forward slightly, her voice still controlled but with an edge of steel underneath. "I think you might be underestimating both my journey and our audience's intelligence. We all face different challenges, and I believe there's room for everyone's story to matter." "Room for everyone?" The scoff was audible throughout the studio. "That's rich coming from someone who's never had to deal with real scrutiny. You get to sit here in your little bubble, asking your little questions, while some of us are out there actually making changes that matter." The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Jennifer's backup musicians, seated nearby, exchanged glances. The cameramen kept rolling, sensing they were witnessing something unprecedented. Jennifer took a breath, her voice remaining steady but gaining strength. "I respect the work you've done, I really do. But I also respect every person who watches this show, and they deserve better than what you're giving them right now. They tune in because they want to feel inspired, not torn down." "Inspired by what? By your safe little conversations that never challenge anyone? Please." The dismissive wave that accompanied these words was captured perfectly by the cameras. "Your audience deserves to hear truth, not this manufactured positivity that you're selling them." Jennifer's eyes flashed, but her voice remained controlled. "You know what? You're absolutely right about one thing. Our audience does deserve truth. They deserve to see people treat each other with basic respect, even when they disagree. They deserve to see adults having conversations without attacking each other personally." "Oh, so now I'm attacking you?" The voice rose, causing several audience members to lean back in their seats. "This is exactly what I'm talking about. The moment someone tells you something real, something that challenges your worldview, suddenly I'm the problem." "No," Jennifer said, her voice gaining power. "You became the problem the moment you walked into my studio and decided that disrespecting me, my team, and my audience was acceptable behavior. That has nothing to do with challenging worldviews and everything to do with basic human decency." The guest's face flushed, but instead of backing down, she doubled down. "Human decency? From someone who's built a career on being palatable? On never making waves? You want to talk about decency? Let's talk about how you've never used your platform for anything that might actually ruffle feathers." Jennifer stood up slowly, her movement deliberate and powerful. The studio fell silent, except for the hum of cameras. "I think," she said, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had earned every ounce of respect she commanded. "This interview is over." The guest's eyes widened, clearly not expecting this response. For the first time since sitting down, she seemed genuinely caught off guard. "Excuse me? You can't just end an interview because you don't like what I'm saying." Jennifer remained standing, her posture dignified but firm. "Actually, this is my show, in my studio, and I absolutely can. What I won't do is sit here and let you continue disrespecting everyone in this room under the guise of speaking truth. This is unbelievable." The guest's voice climbed higher, her careful media training beginning to crack. "You invite me here and then try to silence me the moment I say something you don't want to hear? This is exactly the kind of behavior that people need to see." "You're right," Jennifer replied, her calm demeanor a stark contrast to her guest's rising agitation. "People do need to see this. They need to see what happens when someone mistakes cruelty for courage and arrogance for authenticity." The audience began to murmur their agreement, a low rumble of approval that seemed to fuel the guest's indignation further. "Cruelty? I'm being cruel by pointing out that your show is shallow? That you've never taken a real stand on anything controversial?" Jennifer stepped closer, her presence commanding the entire studio. "You've spent the last 10 minutes attacking my character, dismissing my journey, insulting my team, and condescending to my audience. If you think that's what taking a stand looks like, then you've missed the point entirely. I'm fighting for real change while you're playing it safe with your feel-good interviews." The guest was fully animated now, her hands gesturing wildly. "Someone has to call out this sanitized version of celebrity culture that you're peddling. Fighting for change?" Jennifer's voice carried a note of incredulity. "Is that what you call coming into someone's home? Because that's what this studio is to me, and treating everyone like they're beneath you? Because from where I'm standing, it looks more like throwing a tantrum." The guest shot to her feet, matching Jennifer's standing position. "A tantrum? How dare you minimize what I'm trying to do here? I'm trying to have a real conversation about real issues, and you're reducing it to a tantrum because you can't handle criticism." "Criticism?" Jennifer shook her head slowly. "No, criticism would be thoughtful feedback about my interview style or suggestions for improvement. What you've been doing is personal attacks disguised as social commentary. There's a difference, and deep down, you know it." The cameras caught every micro-expression as the guest's facade continued to crumble. "You know what your problem is, Jennifer? You're too comfortable, too settled, too afraid to rock the boat because you might lose your precious ratings." Jennifer's laugh was short but not unkind. "My ratings are just fine, thank you. What concerns me more is that you seem to think being deliberately provocative is the same thing as being profound. It's not." "Provocative?" The guest's voice cracked slightly. "I'm being authentic. Something you clearly wouldn't recognize if it walked up and introduced itself." "Authentic people don't need to tear others down to build themselves up," Jennifer replied, her words landing with quiet force. "Authentic people don't use someone else's platform to settle their own insecurities." The studio audience began to applaud, slowly at first, then building to a steady rhythm of support for their host. The guest's face reddened further as she realized she was losing the room entirely. "Insecurities? You think I'm insecure? I'm trying to elevate this conversation beyond your usual softball nonsense, and you're calling me insecure?" Jennifer moved back toward her chair but remained standing beside it. "I'm calling it like I see it. Someone secure in themselves doesn't need to spend an entire interview proving how much smarter or more important they are than everyone else in the room." "This is incredible," the guest muttered, running her hands through her hair. "I came here expecting a professional interview, and instead I'm being lectured by someone who's never had to fight for anything real in her life." The comment hung in the air like a challenge. Jennifer's expression shifted, becoming more serious than it had been all afternoon. "Never had to fight? You want to talk about fighting? Let's talk about growing up poor in Chicago. Let's talk about losing my mother, my brother, my nephew. Let's talk about being told I wasn't pretty enough, wasn't thin enough, wasn't the right type for Hollywood." The guest opened her mouth to respond, but Jennifer continued, her voice growing stronger with each word. "Let's talk about fighting for every opportunity, every role, every chance to prove myself. But here's the difference between us. I didn't let those fights make me bitter. I didn't let them turn me into someone who needs to diminish others to feel powerful." "That's not what I'm doing," the guest protested, but her voice lacked the conviction it had carried earlier. "Then what would you call it?" Jennifer asked, spreading her arms wide. "Because from where I sit, You've spent this entire time trying to make me and everyone here feel small so you could feel big. That's not advocacy. That's not courage. That's just sad." The guest stared at Jennifer for a long moment, her breathing visible in the studio lights. "You have no idea what kind of pressure I'm under, what kinds of expectations I have to live up to." "Everyone in this room faces pressure," Jennifer replied, her tone softening slightly but remaining firm. "The difference is how we choose to handle it. Do we lift others up or tear them down? Do we use our platforms to inspire or to intimidate?" "I inspire plenty of people," the guest shot back, but the fire was going out of her voice. "Then why aren't you doing it here? Why aren't you showing my audience that inspiration instead of showing them what contempt looks like?" The question settled over the studio like a blanket, heavy and inescapable. The guest looked around the room, perhaps finally seeing the faces of the people she had been dismissing for the past 20 minutes. Their expressions ranged from disappointment to outright disapproval. "I think," Jennifer said quietly, "it's time for you to go." The guest's mouth fell open as if she had been physically struck. "Are you seriously kicking me off your show right now, in front of all these people?" Jennifer nodded slowly, her decision clearly final. "I am, and I want everyone watching to understand why. This isn't about disagreeing with opinions or being unable to handle tough questions. This is about basic respect, and you've shown none of it to anyone in this room." "This is outrageous," the guest sputtered, her voice climbing to a near shriek. "You can't just throw someone off your show because they hurt your feelings. This is supposed to be a professional environment." "You're absolutely right about that last part," Jennifer agreed, her voice steady as a rock. "This is supposed to be a professional environment. So let me ask you this. What part of your behavior today has been professional?" The guest looked around wildly, as if searching for allies in the audience. Finding none, she turned back to Jennifer with desperation creeping into her voice. "I was trying to have a meaningful conversation. I was trying to push you beyond your comfort zone." "No," Jennifer said firmly, taking a step forward. "You were trying to make yourself feel important by making everyone else feel worthless. There's a world of difference between challenging someone and attacking them, and you crossed that line the moment you sat down." "I cannot believe this is happening," the guest muttered, shaking her head frantically. "This is going to look terrible for you. You know that, right? People are going to see this and think you can't handle real criticism." Jennifer's smile was sad but resolute. "Let them judge for themselves. The cameras have been rolling this whole time. People will see exactly what happened here and decide for themselves who was being reasonable and who was being cruel." The guest's face went pale as the reality of the situation hit her. "You're really going to air this? You're going to humiliate me on national television?" "I'm not humiliating you," Jennifer replied gently. "You did that yourself. I'm just not going to pretend it didn't happen or edit it out to protect someone who showed no concern for protecting anyone else." "This will ruin everything I've worked for," the guest whispered, the fight finally leaving her voice entirely. Jennifer's expression softened with genuine sympathy. "It doesn't have to. This could be a wake-up call. This could be the moment you decide to treat people better, to use your influence to build people up instead of tearing them down." "But the damage is already done," the guest said, slumping back toward her chair. "Only if you let it be," Jennifer replied. "People are forgiving when they see genuine change. But first, you'd have to acknowledge that change is needed." The guest stared at the floor for several long seconds. When she looked back up, her eyes were glassy, with unshed tears. "I thought I was fighting for something important. I thought I was making a point." "What point were you trying to make?" Jennifer asked, her voice gentler now but still firm. "Because all I heard was someone trying to prove they were better than everyone else in the room." "I don't know," the guest admitted quietly. "I honestly don't know anymore." The studio was silent except for the quiet hum of equipment. Even the audience seemed to be holding their breath, witnessing what felt like a private moment playing out in public. "That's actually the most honest thing you've said since you got here," Jennifer observed. "And honesty is where real conversations begin." The guest looked up with something that might have been hope. "Does that mean you'll give me another chance? Let me start over?" Jennifer shook her head slowly but kindly. "Not today. Today, you need to leave. But if you can figure out what went wrong here and genuinely work to do better, maybe someday we can try again." "I messed up really badly, didn't I?" the guest asked, her voice small and defeated. "Yeah," Jennifer said simply. "You did, but messing up isn't the end of the world if you learn from it." The guest stood up slowly, gathering her things with shaking hands. "I'm sorry," she said quietly, though it wasn't clear if she was talking to Jennifer, the audience, or herself. "I know you are," Jennifer replied. "Now you need to figure out how to show it through your actions, not just your words." As the guest walked toward the exit, her heels clicking loudly in the silent studio, she paused at the edge of the set. "For what it's worth, you handled this better than I would have." "I hope so," Jennifer said. "That's what being a host means. Creating a space where people can be their best selves and holding boundaries when they choose not to be." The guest nodded once and disappeared backstage. Jennifer turned back to her audience, who erupted in applause. She raised her hands to quiet them, her expression serious. "I want to be clear about something," she said, her voice carrying to every corner of the studio. "I don't take pleasure in what just happened. I don't enjoy having to ask someone to leave. But I will not allow anyone to use this platform to be cruel to others, no matter who they are." The applause grew louder, more sustained. Jennifer smiled for the first time since the interview began, her genuine warmth returning to fill the space. "We're going to take a short break," she announced, "and when we come back, we'll have some music to lift our spirits. Because that's what we do here. We lift each other up." As the camera stopped rolling and the studio lights dimmed, Jennifer Hudson had proven something important. Sometimes the most powerful thing a host can do is protect their audience from someone who mistakes cruelty for courage. Sometimes the strongest response to disrespect is simply refusing to tolerate it. The interview was over, but the lesson would last much longer.